Next on BBC2, a documentary about the Battle of Britain.
1,796 RAF pilots, 900 RAF deaths. The Battle of Britain was one of the most devastating aerial conflicts the world has ever seen. My name's Chris Peacock, and this is Exploring the Battle of Britain. In this documentary, we shall be looking at some of the key aspects of what made the Battle of Britain what it is today. We shall be going up in real aircraft to see what those pilots would have had to go under. And we'll be visiting a real World War II RAF airfield and looking at one of the most impressive restoration projects in history. My name's Chris Peacock, and this is Exploring the Battle of Britain. The Battle of Britain required an amazing amount of lives and an amazing amount of equipment too. It also required an unbelievable amount of RAF stations, such as this one, RAF Abingdon. Now, although during World War II this was used to train RAF World War II bomber pilots, it was still used as a reserve squadron in the Battle of Britain. Just the sheer amount of lives, equipment and bravery that the Battle of Britain required is unbelievable, and in this documentary we're hoping to look at some of the key aspects of what made the Battle of Britain what it is today, especially one of the RAF's key roles in the pilots of the Spitfires, the Supermarine Spitfire, the saviour of Britain and all we know it. You can only really understand the key aspects of the Battle of Britain when you understand the basics, such as where the dogfights were generally fought.
Dogfights often happened on the coast because as German pilots were flying in, scouts of Fighter Command would alert them that attack was impending, and the pilots would take to the skies to try and stop them before they could bomb important cities or airfields. Another area where fights often happened was airfields themselves, especially in the south, as from German planes from Berlin and the coast, this was the closest. If the Germans managed to surprise the pilots, then they would barely be able to get into the air before the Germans bombed their airfields.
And how many people were involved in them?
The traditional British formation would have had 12 pilots in, and would normally be only 1 or 2 squadrons in the air at a time. But on special cases there could actually be 120 pilots in the air on one side. German swarms were often smaller, comprising of 4 units each, but normally 3 or 4 of these would be in the air.
In order to get an insight into what an RAF pilot would have had to go under in the air in aircraft such as Spitfires and Hurricanes, you have to go up in a real aircraft. And that's why we headed off to Mr. Gliding Club. When in the air, you can notice certain things about aircraft that you can't on the ground. Conventional aeroplanes, unlike this glider, have engines, and these would have created a lot of noise and a lot of vibrations to distract the pilot. The weather would have also pushed the aircraft around in the air. Using wind gusts and heavy clouds, the aircraft would almost become uncontrollable, and the pilot would have had to use all of his skill to combat this. Also, you can't notice from the ground how clouds make such a difference on visibility when you're in the air.
Yeah, but it's like driving, someone else driving. When you first start with them, I never know how to drive and I'm always cautious. But it's, yeah, and the flying is the same.
I'm not going to give you can take it.
Yeah.
Now that we've been up in an actual aircraft, you can have a much greater understanding of what pilots in the Battle of Britain would have had to go under. There were so many different aspects that would have impeded them into doing their best. There would have been the temperature, unbelievable heights. It would have been freezing cold, but in the mid of the day, their cockpits would have been like a sauna. And then there was the visibility. They could only really see forwards. They were strapped in so tight it was hard to pivot in their seat. It would have been hard to look to the side. They had mirrors, but that only showed them a small field of vision. Any enemy aircraft on their tail, they would only find out about it once they heard the bullets being fired and once they felt them being ripped through their canvas. It was hard to understand how a Battle of Britain pilot lived to see another mission, but they did, and the Spitfire in particular carried on showing capabilities in roles other than fighting.
The Spitfire continued to play a diverse role throughout the Second World War and beyond, often in air forces other than the RAF. The Spitfire, for example, became the first high-speed photo reconnaissance aircraft to be operated by the RAF.
When Germany made their first attack on Britain in the air in 1940, Germany had no idea what Britain was putting up against them. They had many aspects other than the Royal Air Force. They had the brand new radar that Germany had never even heard of. And they also had scouts looking for enemy aircraft where if the radar hadn't detected them, they could immediately alarm the fighter squadrons and they would scramble within minutes to a height that would defeat the Germans. And when Germany arrived over the English Channel, they were completely surprised when they saw squadrons of Spitfires and Hurricanes diving on them, protecting the skies of England and stopping, gaining air superiority over Germany.
The failure of Germany to achieve its objective of destroying Britain's air defences or forcing Britain to negotiate an armistice or an outright surrender is considered its first major defeat and a crucial turning point in the Second World War.
British defence was based on the Dowding system, the complex infrastructure of detection, command and control that ran the battle. It was named after its chief architect, Air Chief Marshal Sir H.T.C. Dowding, the leader of RAF Fighter Command.
By preventing Germany from gaining air superiority, the battle ended the threat that Hitler would launch Operation Sea Lion, a proposed amphibious and airborne invasion of Britain.
When R.J. Mitchell designed the Spitfire in 1931, he had no idea what such a role it would play in the Battle of Britain, and neither did the public when they saw it for the first time at the RAF Hendon Air Display on Saturday the 27th of June 1936. The Spitfire was Britain's main fighter. In a combat situation, the Spitfire would head for the ME-109s and the Hurricanes would take the bombers such as Heinkel 111s and Junkers 88s. But this exact role gave the Spitfire a very special reputation. To understand why the Spitfire is such an icon, we heard that the Enstone Flying Club has put together a very impressive project, so we decided to have a look. After a long bike ride all the way to Kidlington, we arrived at Enstone. and immediately got told to go away.
Although we weren't allowed into it, we still know quite a lot about the Spitfire project. It's being run by Paul Fowler at Enstone Airfield by the Enstone Flying Club, and the main objective is to build 12 90% Spitfires of the City of Oxford Squadron. Now these are going to be funded by the general public, and they have even put together a scheme where you can actually pay, and without having any pilot's licence you can go from that and learn how to fly one of these Spitfires. Now this really highlights why the Spitfire is such an icon. It is idolised by the British public. Whenever you see it, nearly anyone knows that it is a Spitfire, and that's what the Battle of Britain did. Almost, the British public is thankful to the Spitfire and Hurricanes of those brave pilots, of what they did, and what heroism they showed.
The Battle of Britain will go down in history as one of the greatest aerial warfare battles ever, and it's thanks to the brave pilots of the RAF flying some of the most high-tech machines of their day that this country, England, is free from the Germans. Thank you very much for watching. This has been Exploring the Battle of Britain.